That was 295 for a set of 8 on bench press. Welcome to week 2 of my competition prep. Today was my main pressing day. While bench press is feeling strong, the real mission today was all about the strict press. I'm building raw strength for strict pressing to help with my axle clean and press ladder in my competition later on next month. And I'll break down exactly how the session went and how it fits into my longer term plan. So first up was the strict overhead press. Now looking at the footage, you'll see that the weight was very light and moved super easily, and that's 100% intentional. The goal right now isn't to max out, but it's to build a solid base strength and give me time to perfect my technique. For the axle clean and press ladder, basically building up my raw strict press power will help when I'm doing the lighter weights. I can rip through those fast and give me more time to rep out the heavier weight. Whereas if I have to go to a clean and jerk or push press style lift, that takes a little bit more time than just grabbing the bar up and pressing it. And so if I can strict press the first couple of bars, that'll save me some time. I was focusing on keeping a tight brace like I do with any sort of compound lift, especially when I start getting heavy, and making sure I have a vertical bar path. You can see I'm wearing a hat. If I'm pressing the right way, getting my head out of the way, pressing basically through where my jaw is and replacing my head with the bar, that I don't hit the bill of the hat. And then as soon as the bar gets over my head, pushing my head through as I complete the rep. That's what I'm looking for in every rep, and I make sure that every rep, even though it's light, giving it the attention to make them all look perfect. Drilling in this motor pattern and help building out my just raw pressing strength for when we start adding more weight later, when it comes down to actually doing the event in the competition. Overall, these felt great. Probably the easiest part of my session. The weight moved exactly as planned, which tells me I'm on track, ready to add more weight for next week. All right, next up we have the bench press. A lot of people see bench press as a main lift, especially just because of how powerlifting. You have the main 3, squat, bench, and deadlift. In strongman, bench press isn't as important. Most trainings that I've seen from people, they use bench press as an accessory, and I do as well. Even though we're not bench pressing in competition, hitting bench press every now and then as an accessory lift is good for building up pressing strength. You're hitting your muscles in a different way, and even though it's not specific, it still has some carryover. Now I am doing strict press, so I am getting more of a specific lift towards my competition. Anyways, as you saw the intro, I had 295 for sets of 8. One thing about my bench press is, and you can kind of see it here in the first reps, it looks a little slow and shaky, but I still end up hitting 8 reps. It is lately, basically since I started training strongman and haven't been focusing on bench at all, my bench press hasn't been great, and so the form just feels a little off and not as technical and tuned in as I'd like it to be. But even when I'm doing 225, the bar feels kind of shaky in my hand, but that's just how it's been. My bench press is stronger than it's ever been, but it just always looks a little slow and grindy, lighter than it should. That's also just a good reminder that just because there are 2 types of lifters, broadly, just two types, where some people lift explosively and you add 5 pounds and then the bar is stuck to the ground or stuck, not moving. Whereas some people look like it's a slow grind from like 70% of their max and up. They'll get a slow grind rep, add 20 pounds, and it'll look exactly the same. So, the more you train, the more you figure out how you are, and you might be one way with one lift like bench press, but then explosive on deadlifts, and that's just how you are individually. But it is important to remember that how a lift looks isn't necessarily representative of how easy it was to the person lifting. After bench press, I moved on to more accessories. One of the staples in my programming has been front raises, and just dumbbell front raises, and those are always good for Those are always good to have in because they target the front delts and some of the upper chest, which is crucial for that initial drive in your overhead press, getting it off the chest. I also did tricep pushdowns to work the lockout strength. For here, it's a little more bodybuilding style, going for stretch at the top of the lift, and then just kind of looking for a pump, hitting high reps. I also did some incline dumbbell bench, which just helps work each arm separately, getting more of that upper chest, front delts. And when you're exhausted in overhead press, especially in strongman where it doesn't really matter, as long as you get it up, it's up. Some of those presses turn into just a standing incline bench where, you know, if you have your glutes activated and your core, you're bracing tight, you can get an arch in your back and turn it into almost like an incline bench press, especially with something like a log that's a little bit bigger and sitting on your chest. So it's always good to make sure you're working incline work to help support your strict overhead pressing strength. To finish this session, I did some dead hangs, which my grip strength. And even though these have been improving week to week, they feel miserable. Especially like the first set, I feel strong. It's always my best set, obviously. And I'm going for max time. The problem is the second and third set. As good as the first set goes, I'm not waiting 10 minutes between sets. The second and third set are very painful. You get the pump in the forearms, and it's just, unfortunately, just how grip training is. And in the gym, I feel like my grip training goes poorly every time. But in competition and nearing competition, it always switch flips, and I feel like my grip strength is great. And I perform well. It's just sort of how it goes for me, I guess. I feel like it's a weakness, and I hate working on grip, but it's just sort of a necessary evil for strongman. Even though you're using straps on deadlifts and stuff, you have to have a strong grip for other events. There's usually some sort of grip event as well. A lot of times, if there's tiebreakers, they tend to be grip based. Grip or like a front hold. You can never have too strong of a grip. Overall, though, this was a fantastic session. Everything's moving in the right direction. And I'm really excited to see how this early part of the comp prep builds and pays off in the end. I'm excited to add more weight as well. This strict press is really light. Yeah, when it's light and easy, it gets kind of boring. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to the gym to do 145 pounds on a strict press. Like, this is nothing, but it has a purpose. That's a wrap on my pressing day for week 2, 7 weeks out. Thank you so much for watching and following along with my prep. And if you're enjoying the series and want to see how this all plays out at the end, I'm going to have a video with some comp footage. If you want to see how this all plays out, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an update. And I'll see you in the next one.